Tonight, we are here for a meeting on the Route 28 Corridor Improvement Project. Again, my name is David Ford, Director of Public Works for the town of Wolfeboro. And what I'm going to do, the way the meeting is going to be set up tonight is I'm going to give an overview of what's been happening and where we're at with the steering committee, which is a Board of Selectmen subcommittee, and what we've been doing about this project. And then we're going to break up into three groups, and then we're going to allow everyone to get up close and personal to each of the alternatives. We've broken the project down into three alternatives, and then will be 15 minutes at each of the stations so that you'll be able to have some discussion, provide comment, ask questions. I'll be stationed at one of the stations. We'll have Engineer Dave McNamara, who's in the back, working with the options for the traffic lights, and then Jerry Fortin, also an engineer from Stantec, will be working on the roundabouts on that side of the field. So with that, the agenda again is pretty, oops. So the first thing I want to do is introduce the steering committee. We have, again, had an active committee that's been working on this, and tonight their role is to listen to you. Our job, what we're trying to do today is to kind of educate you where we are with the different alternatives, and how we've assessed those alternatives and what impacts they would have on the community. And tonight, the steering committee needs to hear from you. So as I introduce each of the steering committee, if you could stand up, please. Kathy Bernard, Kathy. Mary Ann Belanger is not here. Lisa Brademan in the back. Mary DeVries. Dave Ford's here. Cindy Melanson. Linda and Roger Murray. Paul O'Brien. Dave Senecal, Matt Sullivan, and Bob Tuffer. Again, they're going to be, so if they just come up and start talking to you, they're kind of generate discussion. They want to hear from you. We're really looking for your input. Ultimately, the steering committee will have to get together and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Again, let's go back a little bit quickly on this project. This is on the 10-year plan for the state of New Hampshire, which means they're going to pay 100% of it, and they're going to manage the project. It took us a while to get this project on, and working with the Lakes Region Planning Commission, we got accepted a few years ago, and in fiscal year 2018, they're going to start with their conceptual engineering and their right-of-way. So we're timely now to be feeding into that prospect. That project is scheduled, again, not for construction until 2024. So it's going to be, 5 years of engineering and surveying, right-of-way, a lot of things to get done. Right now, the project is estimated just over $10 million. And again, the interesting part, though, we started this process back 7, 8 years ago. And some of you probably were there. We had stakeholder meetings in which we reached out to the community. We had 5 meetings and looked at that point, we had 5 segments. And we were rushing. We ended up doing segment 5, and that was from Pickering Corner out. And that's the project that's under construction now. These segments are broken up, going from one is from Alton Town Line up to Westies, Middleton Road, and then from Middleton Road up to Pleasant Valley Road is segment 2. Segment 3 is Pleasant Valley Road to Christian Ridge Road, and that's where we have some other intersections of interest. The other two, it's pretty standard, not a lot of controversy there. Tonight we're talking about segment 4, which is from Christian Ridge Road to Pickering Corner, and also known as Brickyard Hill. But tonight, we're really focusing on Pickering Corner. Segment 5, like I said, is Pickering Corner to Route 109A. That project was broken off and municipally managed, so this town is managing that project. The state is funding it 2/3, and the town is funding it 1/3. And again, that's under construction, it's on hold for the winter, and then come the spring, we'll be doing a lot upgrades on that stretch. So, what is context-sensitive solutions? One of the things that I kind of went through early on when I came back to Wolfeboro, as an engineer, we don't get into planning. We're like, hey, this is a bridge, design it, build it, get on with it. And I think DOT and a lot of our big organizations were that way. But they've come around, and I went to a planning seminar on this. And basically, this is a different look. Instead of us DOT coming in here and say, okay, this is where it's going to be. And maybe some of you were around 30, 40 years ago when there was a lot of discussion about putting a traffic light up at Pickering Corner. And they pretty much came in and said, hey, this is where it's going to be, bang, bang. And it didn't go over very well. My understanding was some of you people could tell me that they were kind of run out of town and there was no one in favor of a traffic light at that time. Well, since that time, they've developed a new process, and that's what we've been doing here. We want to get the right solution for us. We want to make sure it's a context-sensitive solution, that it fits our community. And what we started off with is identifying the problems and needs of the transportation network we had in town, specifically looking at Route 28. We wanted to develop a project problem statement. What is if we had to summarize, what is the real problem with the corridor and the intersection? And then also, where do we want this project to be? We want to have a vision. Where do we all want to be in the future from now? Not today, but 10 years from now. What do we want this to look like? And then that then sets a set of criteria to evaluate the different alternatives you have. And that way, again, and this is part of that process. So we've narrowed it down by using the engineers, and we've developed a lot of the problems and what we see as needs in the future. And then now we get the alternatives. So now you put them on paper. So tonight, no one is saying one is better than the other. They're just saying these are ways we can solve this problem. This is our opportunity looking forward. So tonight we're asking you to understand what those alternatives are, to think about that. How does that fit in with our community? How would that look 10 years from now? Is that what we need? Look back, some of you spent many years here, you grew up here, some of you maybe recently moved here, but you all have an opinion, and we want to hear that tonight. And then this is the trick. The last one is the trick. How do we build a consensus for the course of action? And tonight, I'm going to take all the pressure off you. You don't have to make that decision tonight, okay? Because in the end, it's DOT that's going to make the final decision, but we have input. So again, today it's about a community involvement, trying to help us come up with, and this is all the different problems and concerns that came up in our earlier stakeholder meetings about the traffic capacity, being unsafe, about crosswalk locations, about curb cuts at the gas station, drainage issues. So these are all things that we had identified. And from that, this is what we came up with. I'm going to have to step back a little bit. But the Route 28 corridor from Wolfeboro-Alton Town Line through Wolfeboro, a.k.a. South Main Street, Pickering Corner, Center Street, is subject to commuter and seasonal congestion caused by vehicles numbers in excess of the road capacity with no viable bypass. Conflicts between pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles compromise the safety and efficiency of the corridor. Existing driveway cuts, buildings, sightlines, and topography further complicate safety and transportation needs. The corridor as it presently exists does not balance community goals with the town's master plan, including friendly pedestrian ways, maintenance of rural, historic, and scenic character, fostering of economic and social vitality, and sustaining a high quality of life for residents, visitors, businesses, owners, and commuters. So all those meetings we did, we kind of got it down to this statement. And I think it still holds true to what we've been discussing. These are our values, and as we look at the different alternatives, we've got to figure out which one of these alternatives most meets and addresses those problems. Now, from that problem statement, we went to a vision statement. So now we're thinking, okay, in the future, we want a solution to meet these criteria. So what does this come out and say? And it's Wolfeboro's Gateway, it's its village core, will be enhanced by Route 28 corridor, which will provide access to the downtown areas while moving traffic through in a slow, steady, and efficient manner, while providing safe, friendly, aesthetically pleasing walkways, bike paths for pedestrians. People will feel comfortable using the corridor, which will promote the town's social life, recreational offerings, historic and natural resources, economic vitality with balancing the needs and interests of residents, businesses, and visitors. It will become a town priority to rebuild and maintain this important transportation aspect while considering safety, the environment, property rights, natural, historical, significant resources, scenic views, and economic impacts. That's a lot to take in. But I think, again, under this, we're not just saying, what's your opinion? We want your opinion in relation to what the vision is. And again, everyone's vision may be different, but again, we're going to try as a community to find out what would best really suit us. And so try to use these criteria as you're looking at these alternatives as we go around. And like I said, we're going to give everyone time to ask questions and speak to them. I'm going to briefly now just go through those alternatives. And again, we call the one unmodified intersection, which will be at this table, and I'll be manning. And that basically means we'll keep it the way it is with maybe some curbs that need to be raised up, maybe some better striping to allow for better management of the traffic, but not a whole significant change, not really, so we're calling it unmodified. The signalized intersection is a very traffic signal. We know what those look like. In the back, we're looking at the possibility where Brewster Academy might move the Academy Drive to tee up and make it a four-way intersection. That's only a very concept plan. It still hasn't been vetted through the Brewster Academy, but from a traffic engineering perspective, it makes sense to take that and make it a four-way intersection. So that's one of the alternatives, as well as a three-leg traffic signal. So that would make sense if they keep the Academy Drive where it is. The mini roundabout, and again, we call it mini because technically it's not a standard roundabout. It's a standard one wouldn't fit in there. When the committee met, we were adamant that any solution had to maintain our two businesses on the corner store and the Three Sisters store. They're very important businesses to our community. If you don't realize that our zoning does not allow any new gas stations in town. We lost one gas station, so now we're down to 3 here at the core and one outside of town. They're very important businesses, so we need to make sure that any alternative respects them and makes sure that they can be viable going forward. And that's why the mini roundabout came about, because the big roundabouts were just wiping them out. And we think that we got the engineers to be a little innovative in the mini roundabouts and pushing it towards Brewster Academy, kind of make that an option that's viable now. Under each of the alternatives, these were some of the criteria we looked at, or some of the impacts. How would one alternative impact parking? How would it impact the monument or aesthetics and lines? So as you go through, we'll discuss those in detail. We wasn't going to go over those in details, but those are the things we're looking at for each of the alternatives. And then you can see the matrix, which we'll have in detail to go over, and hopefully you can, again, add and ask questions about that. Now, these overviews, this would be, again, we'll call it Segment 4, Pickering Corner, and at the top is Center Street coming in. To the left is going downtown South Main Street, and to the right is South Main Street going out of town. The plans we have at the tables are much better, so we can talk to the issues here. Again, no changes, no change, so there's not much going on with that alternative. The next alternative is a traffic light. We all know, we kind of have a picture up there. It can either be a kind of a blackish mast with the traffic lights, or I got a picture of one that's more chrome. And there'd be a traffic light for each lane, depending on the oncoming lane. So if it was a three-way traffic light, we'd have 3 legs, and on the approaches, you would have a straight through and a right-hand turn. If you're coming up Center Street, you would have a right turn, a left turn, and if you're coming the other way, it would be a straight or left turn. The 4-way would just add that extra leg. And then the roundabouts, which again, as you can see, the roundabout is not 100% round, and it's skewed towards the Brewster Academy. On both the 3-leg and 4-leg, the Richardson House would have to be relocated, so that's a significant impact. The monument would have to be moved, and other things, and this would be a significant change to the intersection. So that's the option that will be talked about on the table with Jerry. And that's just the overview. The other thing, which we don't get into a lot, but the typical cross-sections we're looking at for Segment 4. If you think about it now, we have our travelway. We have I hate to call it a green space, but there is a little green there. So it's kind of a beat-up path. And then we have our sidewalk. And that's what we're looking up at the top one. So we'd be looking at a cross-section, which we try to narrow down the travelways a little bit, create a 4-foot wide shoulder or bike lane, then have a curb, and then have a 4 to 8 foot grass median, and then have the sidewalk on either side. So that's the preferred cross-section. Another potential is to move the pedestrians closer to the curb line, so the green strip would be on the back side. Or if you had to have a turning lane, so if we went to left-hand turn lanes at Clark Road or at the hospital, meaning more right-of-way, you need more pavement, so then you would lose the buffer, and again, the curb and the sidewalk would be much closer to the traffic lane. So those are your typical cross-sections. We have those. If you have questions about that, each of the stations we can talk to you about. All right, so how did I do on time? Did I keep pretty good? So the intent now is we're going to break up into 3 groups, and then we're going to have 15 minutes at each group, and then we'll get back and summarize comments. And at that time, we'll take public comment. We'll be passing around a microphone. If anyone has to leave early and wants to leave their comments, they can, put them, questions or comments up on the board. We've also had a sign-in sheet, which, again, if you leave your email address, we're going to have a master email address, so that kind of notes of the meeting and follow-up meetings and activities that are going on with this. We can keep you informed of what's going on. Also, the PowerPoint presentation, the drawings, and all our notes of meeting will be on the web page, so that at a later date, if you want to come back and see the PowerPoint or see the drawings, they'll all be available to everybody on the web page. So I think we covered everything we needed to cover. Does anyone have questions about the format or the logistics of how we're holding the meeting right now? Sound pretty good? All right, so I am going to try to break up into 3 groups. So thank you, and I'll keep a clock on this. We'll try to keep everybody moving every 15 minutes. Not too bad? You like it so far? Purview. Right now, we have to deal with what's there. There's 2 pieces of property. One's a very important business to us that we want to maintain. The other one is a very important property, but it's up to the property owner and the future property owners to decide what they do with it. So we don't have control. Yeah, they would have to get a state curb cut for whatever business they put in, because they're on both state road there. So that would be incorporated, and that's how it works. Any other questions?
The big trucks going around the roundabout.
Okay, good question about the trucks going about the roundabout. My engineers, we have looked at that. The one thing I should say is on the roundabout, we explained that there is a kind of a rumble strip on the inside. So when the big trucks have to use this, they would have to then swing wide, and their rear wheels would hit the rumble strips. So that's designed that they can get around, but they would have to use that. And the curbs would be sloped curves on the outside to help prevent, if they did get too close, the tires wouldn't get cut. So they are tight, but if you've ever seen a big tractor trailer go through a roundabout, I've witnessed them say, oh my God, it's kind of like magic. It does work. So these are designed so that they would work under those scenarios.
The roundabout, if it's like the one that would be, they're all the same in some ways, but wouldn't there be somewhat of a problem in the summertime with the north-south on cutting off coming up the hill?
So what you're saying is whether, the traffic on all options, if we have the bus or the boat comes in, drops off the people crossing the street, and they think it's a mall, and all of a sudden the traffic starts to back up because everyone's, using the downtown like a mall, which happens frequently, any of the options is going to back up traffic through the intersection. And that is a problem for the traffic engineers. How does it work? Well, how does it work now? And we discussed that at this table. It works because you're all stopped. You start looking. You give them the sad face. Can I cut? You're not going anywhere, right? So you mind if I cut in front of you? So you sneak in front of them, and then they say, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I might as well let a few cars go. And then it opens up, and then it goes. So it kind of works. It's like a teamwork approach. That's how it's been working for 20 years. Now, under the scenario of the roundabout, how's it going to work? Same way. At some point, you're going to get to a point where if I go, I'm going to block the intersection. If I wait, somebody can get through to go in a different direction. So the person's going to make that decision. Do I want to be the jerk and sit here because I'm going to block all traffic until I get to go? And that's how it works, because it's unsignalized. With the signalized intersection, it's much different. It makes it very clear cut. Red light, you have to stop. Then the cues, and under the traffic lights, we probably talked about the adaptive traffic pads, so that under those, we have loops under the traffic light so that it can tell how many cars are going. And it actually learns from the traffic patterns how long it should stay green and when they should turn. So under the traffic light, it's kind of learning as it goes along. But under the other two scenarios where you don't have a traffic light, it comes down to people being good to be people.
I mentioned before, the big problem, as I see it, is the fact that anybody, especially in the summer, coming southbound on 28 and making that left turn, they cannot get out of there. As far as I know, the only traffic rule that is universal throughout the whole world is the rotary has the right of way. So anybody coming down Main Street and they're in the rotary means nobody can get in that rotary to make the left turn. It's just impossible. That won't change it. The only thing that'll work is the signal.
That's, again, I think everyone heard that. The opinion was that what we have now is in failure, especially during summer months, and that's when I think if you said you've waited there quite a long time, I'm sure we all have, and if you've been there in the morning when people are going to school, long delays. So that is a significant problem, and again, the traffic light, you're right, well, it does create other issues. It would allow the queue for people coming up to get in. Other questions? In the back.
I know this is just a plan, but I talked about, you don't think the runabout can be moved a couple, maybe 3 feet away from Center Street? I mean, you got everything crowded on the gas stations and everything. I mean, this is just a preliminary plan, but that, you know, especially if the college is willing to move their building and change their entrance, that's something we should address.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. You got to remember, these are very conceptual plans. A lot of details have not been worked out. The comment, which is a good one, well, we think we pushed it enough away from the businesses. The comment was, could we push it a few more feet, and a few feet may make a difference. And if you're going to have to move the Richardson house, you got to move it. So whether you move it 15 feet or 25 feet. So I think that's a very good comment, and that's something that traffic engineers can look at, how we can offset that to help better allow traffic to get in and out of the gas stations. That's actually a real good comment.
A scenario where you end up having people at the school going across the crosswalk and headed north. Now you have cars that back up to the traffic circle. If there is only one lane coming from the south into that traffic circle and the lead car wants to go down to town instead of going on Center Street, now what happens? They're stuck, they're jammed.
Good scenario. So the scenario is saying because there's not a right turn slip lane, so we're traveling north on South Main Street. We come to the intersection, the roundabout, and because there's only one lane in, and you want to go straight, and you're waiting, you can't take that right turn lane where a lot of traffic does want to go right. That's going to create a backup until you can go forward because you have nowhere to go. You can't get out of the way. You don't have the left turn. So that is an issue with the roundabout. That's a good comment. No slip lanes in roundabouts. No slip lanes in roundabouts.
I have been at intersections with a traffic circle that did have slip lanes. Yeah, they have a separate right turn lane. And one thing I wanted to say about the roundabout is it does not take away any parking, which is really impressive.
Okay, that's a good comment. And you're almost right. There are intersections which then you need, if you need another lane, now you got to widen the circle by quite a bit more. So there are intersections where you have a dedicated right turn lane on a roundabout. I don't think we have anywhere near the room to that kind of.
So I would just like to note that in a roundabout, the only kind of turn that you can take is a right-hand turn. So it eliminates everybody stacking for a left-hand turn. So that's good. I mean, everybody's creeping along and only going in one direction. You don't have to wait for somebody crossing, which seems to be the problem at that intersection. And my other point is I would love to see trees in that grass median when it occurs between the sidewalk and the road, just to keep the trees close to the road to calm traffic and also just to provide shade and beauty.
Well noted. We ought to make note of those two things because the trees that was discussed, that in the roundabout option, we are going to lose the most amount of trees. And we can replant those trees. But the question is, can we plant them? You're saying in the aisle, in the refuge where the crosswalk is? In the middle? Okay, yes. Yeah, that's a definitely plan. So one of the options would be to make sure any tree that gets down, we actually replace it with a mature tree. Yes.
I think the roundabout it offers the most opportunity for planting and making the entrance to town more attractive. And I think it also is the most pedestrian friendly, because as you have those little islands coming up on the road to separate the lanes, that would be a place where pedestrians could stop if need be. So I think it'd be a lot easier for people to walk about that intersection.
Good, thank you. That's a good comment. So she was indicating that the roundabout provided a nice pedestrian space, and aesthetically, you thought it was most pleasing of the options because it does provide for the green panel, and it provides for safer pedestrian paths and defined paths around the circle.
You're talking about traffic lights. Are you talking about the standard light that turns red even though the corner is not being used by the other side, or are you using smart lights? And if you're using smart lights, my own personal thing is it's much better than this, because it's actually timing itself for what is actually happening. And if one car or two cars need to go through, they'll be really quick. And if there's like 8 cars, it may only let 4 go through, and then so you're not lined up, where just as we've been talking about, when you're heading south or you have to go all the way around that circle, you're in for a jam.
So the question was, can the traffic lights be timed, or can they learn? And that is yes. The advancements in traffic lights now, they has loops. They actually can count the traffic, so they will actually react to the traffic, so that if most traffic is going in one direction, it'll stay green in one direction. I used the wrong term, right. They're learning, they're adaptive to the traffic going on. So that would help. So if all the traffic is heading in a north-south, they'll stay green. When someone comes up Center Street, okay, you're one car there, it says, okay, we've had green for a while, and the computer is programmed to say, okay, we're going to give you a left turn lane. Everyone gets the yellow, red light, they get the left turn lane. It says, oh, wait a second, there's no one else behind them, one car. He gets just 3 seconds, bang, it goes green in the other direction. If there's more cars coming, it'll clear the queue up to a certain predetermined amount, because the traffic knows there's still traffic coming from the other direction, so we only can give them so much time. And as it goes, like everything we have, it's learning our practices and then trying to improve our traffic flow. So that's the one advantage of the traffic. It does learn and would help in those scenarios. So it would react to traffic. The traffic signals have certain times. So when a yellow light has to have a certain time, that's a standard, and then it goes green. And the green would have a minimum time and have a maximum time. But it would be programmed by the traffic engineers based on it's more efficient under moderate. When you get to the heavy traffic times, when the traffic starts to back up from the downtown area, then we get the same problem. It's going to have extended delays. But it does work efficiently, but there is that cycle when it's yellow, then red, and it's red in all directions. So from that perspective, it does slow everyone down for that point in time. The one counter to this is we know how we drive. If all of a sudden you're in a rush and you see the yellow light, whoa, I better step on the gas. Where, really, and when you went to driving school, you're supposed to slow down and stop. But a lot of people say, oh, we got to go fast, and that's a concern with people jumping the lights and having T-bone accidents of people.
Trying to verify between when you're having a program or work to just work the times out, I'm also talking about one that's got a sensor, and it is sensing in reality what's happening right there, not to be programmed for what's going on.
So it's actually measuring the cars going by. That gets inputted into the computer, but the computer has a PLC that's learning as it goes along. Well, so the answer is yes, I have seen them. Everett Circle down going to the Logan Airport, but I don't think that would be a candidate for here. So I would say that that's probably not an option for a low intersection like this. So the question was, can you have a traffic light with a rotary? Or have I ever seen one? And then Jerry reminded me, yeah, I have. And you go down to and it's kind of a crazy situation for really a crazy, and though we have a crazy intersection, so maybe it would qualify. It's getting close to 8 o'clock, and again, we wanted to get everyone's input. So if someone hasn't talked, if they want to say yay or nay about something, so the question was, can we make photos available of rotaries? And that's something Matt, we can do that, right? So we're going to set up this web page with this presentation and the data, and then it might take us a couple days, but we can get pictures and get those so you can get a look at what we have for rotaries and for traffic signals.
I'm just wondering if we have talked to towns, as an example, Kennebunk and Kennebunkport have both done this exercise, and also Rye, New Hampshire, and based on meetings I've attended, they've felt the roundabouts was the best solution, and they've seen the results now years later. is there any way to either reach out to any of them or to, they're not going to come and speak at a meeting, but is there a way to, because I will say from follow-up meetings to their roundabouts, I was involved in the preliminary meetings, and then 3 years later at Kennebunkport, went to a meeting where they discussed the after results, and with the roundabouts, they were thrilled with the results. So,
I want to repeat that and make sure, because I'm not sure everyone can hear that. Very good comment. That have we talked to any communities that have gone through this, who've looked at intersections, have come up with the alternative of being a roundabout, and then after they built it, they followed up and had some discussion. That is a great, and I think, Matthew, you were taking notes on that. So the 3 communities were Kennebunkport, and Rye. And again, if someone else knows of an intersection that's similar that we could study, we ought to throw that in. So we'll reach out. That's a very good point.
I heard this morning that North Conway in 2019 will be putting in their 3rd roundabout in the Conway district. So that is actually going to be happening right away, and along with a Route 16 and 153 roundabout also.
So those are other areas, and one of the things I encourage everyone to look at is look at a roundabout where there's a gas station. Look at one that has a convenience store and see how they're doing, because I think Sal has a very big concern, and so do I, that can a business survive on a roundabout? And I think traffic-wise, the roundabouts do work good. But when we talked about our problem and our vision, we want to make sure our solution does not negatively impact our... So, Sanford, Maine, that's a good one. So Sanford, Maine, we got to look at. Rye, yep. So those are all ones we can look at to kind of get an idea. Again, we would like to keep this discussion ongoing so that after the fact, my name and Matthew's out there. So if you want to send us an email, if you want to put something in writing, you feel strongly about one way or another. Again, hopefully if you talk to the committee members, we are going to have a second meeting. Our next meeting will be to discuss the intersections at the hospital, public safety, and the high school, and the rest of the cross-section going out. Just to kind of, and the committee is meeting on that also, and we'll do a similar type of matrix looking at the impacts of each of the alternatives. That meeting right now is tentatively scheduled for the end of February, and February 22nd. It'll be here. It'll be a similar format. If anyone has any comments about the format, what worked well, what didn't work well, if you want to stop and tell me later or send me an email, be more than happy to listen.
Maybe this has been covered and I didn't hear it or didn't pay attention, but have numbers been run as to the efficacy of each of these with projections over the next 10 to 20 years?
Awesome question, but the answer is no. So I think he was saying is, have we, when we talk about conceptual level, now taking these to the next step, which is what DOT is going to look at, how efficient would each of the intersections be under certain traffic assumptions? So we could run these through traffic models, but at this point, our focus is going to end, and we're going to hand it off to DOT. They have the $1 million budget. We had a very small budget to work with. So we got to a certain point, and we're kind of working on a very subjective. So that's a very objective thing. Can you measure how this will impact traffic under this scenario? If there's 10,000 vehicles a day coming up South Main Street, how would it affect under those scenarios? And what you do is you can build a model and plug it in and answer those questions theoretically. So that hasn't been done. That will be done in the next process. So we don't have those answers for you. And that's why we're kind of not asking anyone to make any official votes tonight, but we're just trying to have those thoughts out there and understand where we're at. The other thing that was asked also about cost. What are the different costs for each of those things? So that might have an impact. If one's $1 million, one's $2 million, and one is $50, that might have an impact on how we vote on that. So at this point, we're not asking anyone to vote, but we are continuing to ask to discuss it with your neighbors, discuss it at the coffee shop. We'd like to continue the input, and again, you can always talk to the committee members. And again, Matthew and myself at Town Hall, we are accepting emails or letters. And with that, I guess if anyone else would like to make any final comments. We hope to have the meetings in February and in March be able to provide the selectmen with a recommendation so that they could turn around and make a recommendation to the DOT, which we think they're going to start up on it this summer. So we're trying to stay ahead of them and provide that input. And remember, this is not the end, because once it gets into DOT's hands, they're going to crunch the numbers. They're going to come back to us, and there'll be additional public meetings once they come, and they'll have better drawings, more specifics. But what's the good thing is all the questions we're asking today, we're going to put and give to them. So when they start to design, we can find out, hey, we're concerned about this, we're concerned about that. So those are the things, hopefully, when we come back, and it may be a year from now or 2 years from now, the drawings will be better developed, but they'll take our input.
Is a private entity, I would think that its impact could be very significant in the decision-making that they do as to how this could go. And it would be really nice.
Well, the question is about Brewster, and they clearly have a huge impact. They're a major partner with us. Even though they're a private entity, we feel they were a partner with the town. We partner with them on a lot of things. Again, they were here tonight, representative, and they're saying they're going to work with us. They're developing their long-term plan, so it's a good timing. And obviously, whatever they do, or what that was told to me tonight is they want to do what's best for the community, and they like the process. They're happy that we're asking everyone's opinion, and I think again the process is going to continue. So again, that is a good point. Any other points that we haven't brought up yet, or anyone want to say anything? Well, the question was when DOT starts to design, how does it go about? So they're going to start this year in looking at the conceptual plans, and we're going to provide hopefully a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen what our opinion of a community is. We want this option here, we'd like this option here, we'd like that option. That's correct. Well, we decided on purpose not to have a poll tonight because we didn't want the pressure on you, because there's still a lot of unknown questions. But we wanted to get your feelings and get eventually the steering committee, which is a representative of the community, is going to make the vote. So the steering committee will make a vote. Hopefully it'll be a unanimous recommendation to the selectmen. So there's a hope that the steering committee, which is here tonight, talking to you people, listening to everyone, and then continuing with the next public hearing, we'll have that input, and then at the end, we will make a vote and a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. So that's how we've decided to go. If we wanted to hold a poll here, we could say, hey, we could do a straw poll, but we didn't think that was appropriate at this time. At this point, we're looking for any comment we get, anybody who puts something in writing. If you feel strongly one way or the other, I'll be more than happy to take on the way out. If you want to say, hey, I've heard enough, I like this option. If you want to give your opinion, we could take that now. The decision was made not to have a very subjective voting at tonight, though. But we are willing to listen to what anyone says. And if you feel strongly about one option over another, we're more than happy to take a letter in writing as support. But it will be the steering committee is really held with the responsibility of kind of boiling down a very interesting project and coming up with a recommendation that we feel fits the best. And again, what we're going to use is this method, though. We're not just going to be, my opinion is, it's based on all the things we heard, all the input we have tonight, and the input we're going to get in the second meeting. And I think that's the way we felt it was best to go through. But any other last comments? Because again, I like getting home early. I like trying to hold meetings. So I said an hour and a half, so it's been an hour and 40 minutes. Not too bad, right? Are we all okay? Everybody okay? All right, thanks so much. Thanks for coming.